Welcome to Give. I'm Lauren. I'm a national board certified health and wellness coach.
I'm Soma. I'm a family physician.
And I'm Chris, a fitness guy.
Yeah,
I'm a healthy fitness guy.
He's a very healthy fitness guy. Hey, we've got a topic that I think really may interest you. You might wonder why the winter maybe is a little harder to get through. January is kind of an interesting month for many people. Why are the seasons able to mess with our moods? If you're interested in knowing why, and then some tips and tricks as to how to make it better, how to make your winters more tolerable and less suffering, you might want to stay tuned.
So the first part of this we wanted to go into is to talk about what exactly causes or contributes to worse moods in the winter. Specifically, depression, anxiety, things like that seem to be more common or seem to be an experience a lot of people have throughout the winter. So we're going to go through and talk a little bit about the different contributing factors, and then at the end we'll give you some tips and tricks. So Soma, tell us, what's the first thing? What's one of the first things that contribute to this?
Well, what's kind of interesting is there is an actual diagnosis and an experience of a thing called seasonal affective disorder, or SAD. And it happens, basically, it's when people have depression and problems at the same time each year. And generally that occurs in the winter. There's all kinds of ways to help with preventing that or with treating it when it shows up. But just generally knowing that there's an awful lot of people that struggle in the winter with mental health issues, it can be reassuring that you're not the only one, that you're not alone, and that there are other people that have issues with that. So especially if you've noticed a pattern of that you always seem to get down, I used to have trouble in March. There's different reasons for that, but in recognizing patterns in yourself, that can be very helpful in figuring out how to change it up and maybe not have as much suffering. And Lauren, do you have some things that that you seem to think about or that we think about that affect mental health, especially in the winter?
Yeah, there's a lot. I think one of the biggest ones was the length of the day, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you can speak more to that of how do the shorter days impact maybe the hormonal changes and things like that.
Yeah. So shorter days has a huge impact on all kinds of things. We are beings of light. We actually used to go to bed when it got dark and wake up and do things when it got light. So we've kind of co-opted that by artificial lighting, and the length of the days in the winter where we actually have full spectrum light from the sun is much shorter. And it depending on where you are in the United States as to how much that's changed. So the farther north you are, the more impact that has. I vividly remember going to work when I was in way northern Indiana in pitch black at 8 o'clock in the morning. But down here, more in the Southwest, we don't have that happen as much. So length of day has a huge impact on what our moods do, how we're able to sleep, things like that. And there are some really cool, stay tuned for what you can do to help with that.
And when it comes to the that tendency of the shorter days and things to bring us more into depressive moods, we have a tendency often to change our diet a little bit and to kind of go towards more of the comfort type foods. And those are traditionally, the comfort type foods that include a lot of sugar, and the comfort type foods that include a lot of alcohol and things like that as well. So those have a tendency to cause crashes and mood swings that basically compounds the problem and makes things even more challenging for us. So we kind of feel like we're giving ourselves a topical to kind of take the edge off, but the byproduct of that is actually much more detrimental than what we gained from it in the first place. So food's kind of an important thing to pay attention to, staying super healthy on during the summer, especially, or in the winter, especially when we start to notice that we're becoming more anxiety or depression prone.
I think to add to that is that those food choices then impact our sleep, which can have that compounding effect on our mood. And then vice versa, when we get bad sleep, then we're more likely to lean into those less nourishing foods that cause more mood issues. So it's a
big
real
one. It's a big one for me. If I have any alcohol at in the evening. I don't sleep as well. And then the first thing I do in the morning is I reach for more coffee because I'm tired. It's just kind of a vicious cycle. What happens.
Yeah. Well, and there's definitely this time of year that I think some people may not realize is it's kind of a letdown from the holidays. Holidays can be very stressful. We've had Thanksgiving and then we had Christmas, and sometimes it's really stressful being around family. If it's not stressful being around family, it's stressful not having family. Then when you have wonderful family to be around, you go back to your situation where you're maybe not around your family. There's lots of changes. We've gotten into different habits over the last couple of months, and then you have to get back into your previous habits or wanting to change up, New Year's resolutions. Oh, I've got to change myself. That can all be incredibly stressful on us. So there's lots of reasons why our mood might be impacted in not a positive way by this time of year. And I don't know if you've noticed some things that are maybe about activity that happens to us.
Yeah, like with certain clients I work with, and Chris, I'm sure you see this all the time being a personal trainer, but I work with people and they'll be active more in the summer because they like to go outside, they like to do recreation outside. But if people aren't into going to the gym, winter tends to be a time when they're less active. And what happens when we're active is that we release these endorphins, which are known as feel good hormones. So literally, we work out, we feel better. And so if we take that away in the winter, then we're not going to feel so good.
Right.
And we have a fun study to share with you in a little bit. But there is, I feel like, one last thing. And Chris, do you want to speak to that going inward a bit?
Yeah. Well, when people tend to spend more time alone in the winter time, and it's kind of the old thing about that's changed recently too with the things that are happening with COVID and things like that. Is there's a whole lot more people that are spending time alone, and we're obviously going to be talking about some hacks for this. But when you have a lot of time by yourself, there's just a lot more. They say an idle mind is the devil's workshop kind of thing. So there's a lot of times we're our own worst advocates for how we're feeling when we're alone, because it kind of lends itself towards more depression or more anxiety because we think more.
Yeah, and if only we had wonderful positive thoughts all the time.
I do want to add to the blue zones, which are known to have the areas that have the longest living people, and your mood and how your general mental health contributes to how long you live. But one of the main things was the feeling of camaraderie and not feeling lonely. Loneliness does kill people too. And so I think it contributes, it adds to that whole fact. If you're feeling lonely, you can start thinking more, and those thoughts can then compound, like you were saying.
Yeah, patterns of thinking just kind of end up being patterns that you visit a lot more when you're alone.
Yeah, and I guess to circle back to the blue zone thing, because I don't think I completed that, but the blue zones, they generally have really strong camaraderie and maybe little groups of people that they're very close with. So that's a lot of the why. A lot of why as to why we please hold. We're gonna keep rolling, but we're gonna say hi to whoever's knocking. So one of the things we just went through is all the whys that are contributing to mental health issues in the winter. We want to give you some tips and tricks as to how to help with that. So we'll go through all the things we talked about and what are some potential solutions to that.
Yeah.
We'll go back to you, Selma.
Well, what's really cool is there's solutions. I grew up in the sunny Southwest. So when I went to some of my training to become a doctor, I got to find out what the Midwest was like. And the sun doesn't shine very often there, and it shines even less during the winter. So our less light exposure that we talked about earlier, there's actual very successful, very scientifically proven treatments for this. And one of them is light therapy. I used to have people, it's very simple. You don't have to necessarily buy an expensive light box, although they're getting less expensive, but you need a full spectrum light, which now there's full spectrum light bulbs, meaning it needs to mimic the sun. It needs to mimic the light coming out of the sun, which is in a whole bunch of different wavelengths. Our incandescent lights, things like that, just have one wavelength. The blue screens, that sort of thing, are one wavelength, but you need all of them. And you can do it very simply. I used to have people go buy a really inexpensive fish hood, which is the light part of a fish tank, and then put in the light bulb that's used for growing fish plants, for plants in an aquarium, because those are full spectrum lights. Plants need full spectrum light in order to grow underwater. And you can get one of those, put in a very inexpensive light bulb that's full spectrum, or it says will grow your plants for live plants. Plug it in, and then you put it at a 45-degree angle at about an arm's length away. And every morning when you first get up, you don't want it shining right in your face. That's very stressful, but you want the light indirectly hitting you from the side, and you can turn on a timer. And you can do it for 5 to no more than 15 minutes, where you're being exposed to that light while you eat breakfast or while you're doing something for 5 to 15 minutes first thing in the morning. And you do that every morning, starting in usually, if you have seasonal affective disorder, if you have trouble in end of December, January, February, March, you want to start it in around October. So I always tell people, start thinking about your lights at the end when Halloween's around. And just doing a little bit of light therapy then, because that keeps that amazing rhythm of our hormones and everything nice and steady. So it's kind of a preventative thing. It can also be treatment. If you're into the middle of it and you're feeling groggy and horrible, you can also start it at any time. You can start it tomorrow or today if you wanted to. I generally recommend it first thing in the morning. You don't want it can be really activating, so it may not help you sleep if you do it right before bed. So when you first get up.
Sorry to interrupt, but what about the people who do live in a sunny place?
If you do live in a sunny place, like we do, or you're farther in the south, you can go outside. Guess what's the best source of full spectrum light? The sun.
Yeah.
So when there's not constant clouds, when you're in a place where there is sunshine, what an amazing, amazing thing to do is just to go outside and get some real sunlight.
Even if it's cold.
Even if it's cold, you can bundle up. There's wonderful stuff out there that keeps us warm when we're outside and moving around in the sunshine. So that's a wonderful thing. You can also, I don't push supplements a lot, but there are a few that I do recommend. So stay tuned for other things to find out what other ones. But vitamin D supplementation is a really good thing to do for all kinds of reasons, but it can definitely help with moods and digestion. You want to be careful how you get it. Tablets that are white and chalky, we don't digest them very well. So either getting the gel cap kinds of things that are yellow or getting the drops are the best way to get vitamin D into you. So those are a really, really good way to start in helping your body be a little less down and a little less anxious during the winter months. So there's other ways besides supplements. So that's our one supplement. So what are the things we always talk about?
Yeah, I think to the point is like we don't usually say anything about supplements. We're always like, get everything you need from food as much as you can. So, we talked about how we're more likely to lean towards comfort foods in the winter months. And I think part of that reason is because certain foods elevate our mood at first before they have the negative effect, hence the mood swings that Chris was referring to. So I think being aware that your food choices impact your mental health so significantly. So, I think people tend to want to go towards more comfort foods, right? Maybe like mac and cheese and pasta dishes and maybe some soups. And I've even worked with people who are like, soups and stews are bad, and I'm not sure exactly what they're putting in it, but they can be so nourishing. And so I think keeping in mind, still eat your veggies. If you don't want to eat a salad, I don't blame you. I don't want to eat a salad in the winter either. So you want to winterify your vegetables. You can roast them, put them in soups and stews. What are other popular dishes people have in winter that I'm kind of missing? Meat. I feel like people like good steak dinners with maybe like mashed potatoes and stuff.
Right.
Or some sweet potatoes.
Sweet potatoes are always a good choice.
Yeah, so I think that's a fun way to just keep in mind you can still eat vegetables. You don't have to have a salad. That's not the only way to get your veggies.
Warm veggies are just as good for you as there's all this raw food movement. You can cook them and it's still good for you.
Sometimes it changes how they benefit you too. So sometimes it's good to have raw, sometimes it's good to eat cooked. Like, there's a lot of benefits.
Exactly.
But and I think having to that point, like our body is telling us if you listen to those cravings to some degree, just knowing we don't want to feed into the cravings that are going to lead to the spiral effects, negative health outcomes.
Right.
The other one is sweets that people like. It's okay to enjoy some sweets. So think about like throw in a little honey in your tea or coffee. You could do berries. It's still a great thing to eat. And then the other one, dark chocolate, my favorite. Eat some dark chocolate. Lots of good things, 70% or higher. And then the other thing, we were talking about how alcohol tends to increase. I think whenever you feel the urge to get a drink, just ask yourself why exactly do you want to drink? Is it to relax? Is it to distract yourself? Is it to forget something? Is it to help you be more social? And think about that route and then try and think of maybe 2 or 3 things that you could substitute. Try one of those before you go for a drink. And then maybe you try one of those things that you still want to drink, have the drink, but ask yourself, try and figure out what are some other solutions. For some people, the stress of being with family, they start drinking more. So what are some other ways that you could de-stress? Maybe you're bored in the winter and so you drink. What are some things you could do to bust your boredom? So
I was blown away by how kombucha, because
Mhm.
at first I was like, what's this yuppie drink kombucha?
Yeah.
Now I'm freaking hooked. I make my own and all that.
Yeah.
I'm all about kombucha, but this is
Yeah.
an amazing physiological experience that kombucha gives me, and I hope other people get the same belly buzz off of it that I do. But
Yeah.
it's not so much of a heady buzz from alcohol; it's a belly buzz from kombucha, and I absolutely swapped it over because I got to the point where I liked having kombucha a whole lot more than even having a beer or a glass of wine.
I literally ask bars if they have kombucha on tap. I wish they all
I wish they
did.
did.
I know.
Boulder's all about it.
Yeah, we'll maybe get to that point.
Yeah.
It is,
We need to grow up.
what I realized as I was like, there was a point in time in the spring or in the summer when I did cut out alcohol to train for an event.
Mhm.
I didn't necessarily drink so much that I noticed, but when I was off of that, when I was done with that race, I realized I'm like, I want to go out, I want to go social, but I don't really want a beer, I don't really want a cocktail. Like, kombucha sounds great though. So I think realizing that it's not always about the drink. It might just be that you're craving social interaction or you want something other than water.
Right.
So it's sometimes hard if your local bar doesn't offer anything, but I think keeping that in mind of like, why are you going for a drink? Okay, and then food. What else is our thing? Food, focus,
focus,
fitness.
Oh yeah, that fitness part.
Yeah.
Yeah, the food. When it comes to exercise, mental health. Exercise is mental health. UK did a study, and they came up with, and it was a huge study, it was massive, and they came up with some pretty big numbers. If you're not somebody who exercises aerobically and not somebody who exercises your muscles and works on your lean mass, you have a 90%.
98.
It's actually 98.
98%. Yeah, chance of experiencing depression and a 60+% chance of experiencing anxiety. So, it's literally the chemical cocktail that exercise gives you when you exercise aerobically and when you exercise your muscles is worth lots and lots of money on the open market. Your brain makes all these neurochemicals and they're really very good for you. So it's an amazing thing. There's another thing that in just 3 weeks, there was something about reducing mental health downturns by like 30%. If you just
That's 10% a week. That's amazing. You can decrease your depression and improve it by 10% a week. So 3 weeks you can decrease it by 30%.
Yeah, that kind of blew me. Those numbers are very high, and like when you think about looking at the measurable things of things like pharmaceuticals and stuff, they don't even touch what exercise and these little hacks that we're giving you. I was blown away to see that 98% of the people who really don't move are going to be depressed. And it makes sense to me, but unfortunately, that makes me understand that a whole lot of people are depressed and they don't even know why.
And I think it's, to add to that, it doesn't take a lot. I think 10 minutes a day at a minimum actually has really positive effects. So thinking of that, like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to go outside, but could I do some jumping jacks or a quick HIIT workout or a yoga routine in my living room or something?
Yes, it doesn't take that much to get that chemical cocktail. It's not about the amount of, it's not about what it comes down to when it comes to fitness is its consistency. Because as you get better at anything, anything that you're consistent at, your volume's going to go up as a natural byproduct of being consistent. So that you never really even have to worry about how much you're exercising, because it has so many positive effects that as you get over the hump and you've been exercising long enough that your body actually craves it when it doesn't get it. That's a wonderful thing to get yourself to.
And I think you can look forward to it, because Chris is going to do his whole own Get Busy Living next week that talks about tips and tricks around winter exercise, and what you can do. And I'll go into more depth on this topic. So maybe we didn't give you a million tricks on this, but we will next week. To transition to one of the last things, spending time in nature can really help mental health. And I know that may not sound the most desirable in the winter, but if you can, go outside, bundle up. Like we said, there's the light that's impactful, but the more time in nature, it can actually really have this positive effect on our nervous system, and it will help us activate more the parasympathetic, the rest or digest. And when we're in that state, we're happier, we're less inflamed, we're more relaxed, and that's more the direction of mental well-being, I would say. Besides, I guess sometimes there's good stress, but we won't go into that right now.
Yeah.
But there's one last thing that we haven't touched on.
Well, it's food, fitness, focus. Yeah, when it comes to meditation, if you haven't already done so, there are a number of ways that you can go about achieving a meditative state. There's a number of ways to go about it, and it's just something that you need to know is critically important. In today's world, we all need to be meditating on some level, however that looks. And just to remind you, maybe you don't know this, maybe you do. It's a very simple thing. The meditative state is just a single point in focus rather than distraction. So anything that causes a single point of focus, some people focus on breathing because it's that single pointed focus that they can stay focused on and keep it and stay attentive to. But there's a number of different ways to go about staying attentive and focused on one thing and not being distracted by a lot of things that might be in the future or the past. It's that whole practice of being present. So, man, I would just say that's kind of interesting that we waited till the last thing, but maybe it'll make a big impact because I cannot begin to say how important it is. You don't always have the experience of getting a lot of benefit from those right off the bat, except everybody starts saying, wow, you seem like you're doing a lot. What's going on with you? So sometimes we're the last ones to see it, but a consistent meditation of some sort is critical. It's just like exercise. Meditation is exactly like I explained about exercise. It's not about the duration. It's not about how well you do it. It's just a matter of being consistent. You can't do it wrong. So while you're getting into a routine, you can't get. It just doesn't pay off to be hung up on whether or not you're doing it right or wrong. It's just a matter of being consistent and then logically and progressively increasing the amount of time it takes because you want to and your body wants it.
Mm-hmm. That way, if you're alone a lot in the winter, you're not constantly just swimming in negative thoughts. So knowing that there are solutions, even if you really feel like your brain couldn't possibly do it. We talk a lot about this in other videos. I'm sure talk about it in another Get Busy Living. But I think that's pretty much everything. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, other than I'll always reach out if you're feeling alone and sad.
Mm-hmm.
It takes amazing courage to say I need help. But there are hotlines. There's all kinds of places, churches, things like that. But don't know that you're not alone. There's a lot of people that get lonely and down and anxious and that sort of thing, especially in the winter. And don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, that was a great place to end. So we'll be back next Wednesday. Well, Chris will be here next Wednesday, 4:30, to talk about 4:30 Mountain Standard Time to talk about winter exercise ideas, tips, tricks, and anything else that comes to mind.
We might even do a little dance.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
A soft shoe.
Yeah.
All right. See you next week.